convey. Okay, hello everyone. Today's episode is focused on the theme of kindness. And so the effort is for me to explain why the reason for kindness is actually a collective reason. Most people are trying to be kind to go to heaven or to in some sense feel good about themselves. These are personal views on kindness. And if we look at the design of the human being and we consider the journey it has gone through, we will come to an appreciation and of why kindness is necessary on a global level. It's not a kindness where everybody has to be fluffy and like Jello, Sorry guys, I had an interruption. To continue, why does a 30-year-old guy on this planet want to talk about kindness? Why has a human being considered a unique argument for kindness that makes it unconditional? In this episode, I guess I'm trying to argue not about individual satisfaction but collective satisfaction. I have noticed something about myself, that the motives of my being in this lifetime have been collective. That means imagine in the future there will come, for example, imagine in the future there will come computers that connect all our minds together, and so human beings, when they do something cruel, or let's say we see a conflict where there's someone being violent to someone else, their people's inner realms will be accessible to each other. And when they are accessible to each other, the brutality, the savageness of kindness will be accessible by the person committing, let's say, savageness or being savage. So, an argument for why kindness is globally necessary. I want to share with the viewers three approaches, three ways where kindness in some sense has a value or is relevant to. See, before we understand any verb, we have to understand the noun where the verb is beginning from. Kindness is a human idea, to be honest. I don't want to say it's a human idea, but it's a quality of nature which we human beings humanize and we consider as kindness. There is a kindness of the inner realms and there's a kindness of the outer realms. Kindness in the inner realms is when minds, open minds, help each other. Kindness in the outer realms is when bodies help each other. Now, 3 dimensions should be considered here: the dimension of the self, the dimension of the species, the dimension of the world. To the individual, let's say you're not even part of this human species and you're listening to my talk. The idea is that the perception, the perspective of a conscious individual creature opens with it being a self, with it finding itself in a world, and with it finding other senses of self in the world. That means if we were to draw a triangle, inverted triangle, and in some sense we have the world as the bottom point and we have self and others as the top 2 points, the idea is that there's a relationship of self to other and self with world. There's a relationship of others with ourself and with the world. And then there's a relationship of the world with the self and others. Now, this is very fascinating because when I say kindness is important and it's necessary, I am not just speaking to the human archetype. That means if the world is alive, the world should be kind. In some sense, if the species can hear me, the species should be kind. If the self can hear me, the self should be kind. And it's not that kindness is possible in all dimensions. A person can be very kind when it comes to others and not be kind to their self. You know, a person can be kind to their world, you know, but not be kind or conscious of others and their own self, right? If somebody says, Mr.Within, which is the more important kindness? Is it more important to be kind to ourselves, to others, to the world? And I'll say without kindness in all dimensions, that means there isn't decency, there isn't acceptance, and there at the same time, kindness is the quality of an advanced being, right? Because when we look at lesser beings, when we go back in history and we look at our ancestors, they were savage. You know, thanks to the mind, human beings can talk out what they used to fight out. My basic argument is this, that this personally happened in my life. I noticed that I have a sort of distaste or a sort of anger, you know, for how the world is. And not only how the world is, how I am being in the world, but that's a personal thing. I noticed that the explanation on my own emotions of wanting to go from a sort of pleasant possibility into an unpleasant one, it's pretty much, I noticed that I have 2 options. Either I take the way the civilization 1.0, the current civilization is behaving for face value, or I choose to see it as a prototype. You see, I have noticed it is so easy to hate something, but it is very difficult to love something, you know. When it comes to rationality, you can use logic to hate, you know. That means rationality is an authorization for hatred. But love is not a rational conclusion. Kindness is not a rational conclusion. These are emotional decisions. And so when a species is being cruel to itself, that is in some sense a confusion on an emotional level. We don't consider it that we're emotional creatures. You know, the educational system just teaches people, in some sense, the rationale of living. But I feel there is a way that we must comprehend our emotions, acknowledge dimensions to the human being, and pretty much think of it this way, that a person's logic is flawed based on the accuracy of information. So somebody could have the greatest logic, but if they're missing a variable of the equation, in some sense the logic is incomplete, right? For example, this is the difference between science and religion. You know, science allows on its worldview for itself to update, and religion it doesn't. In religion doesn't. For example, the scientific method is so profound that it should be disconnected with atheism, right? This is something I firmly believe, like the scientific method is being tainted by beliefs of any kind. The scientific method is a method, right? A belief is a sort of absolute acceptance of a snapshot of reality, right? In order for our science to update, we must have an ability to consider an updated being, you know, who is using the method. Anyways, there's something here, guys. There's a point to this episode that surpasses my own way of speaking into it. Arguments for why global kindness is necessary on a global level. Why do we need to be patient with the evolutionary human being? Simply because evolution means the creature is learning. You know, the creature is learning from its environment to, in some sense, surpass the limits that the environment imposes. When we look at the human being, really, the human being, aside from the good and evil component of morality that we later on attributed to it, the human being is an effort. Right, that means what's very phenomenal is that before we are a life form with a sort of formal name and, you know, personality, we are a life force. Life started as an unconscious life force, right? An unconscious force. This unconscious force over a very long time, do you know, in some sense reached a point where it turned from an unconscious life form into a conscious life form. The force is experiencing itself as form. So one basic reason why people should be kind in some sense is not to think that they're being kind to an individual, right? Because anytime we peculiarize, specify who we're being kind to, that's conditional. Right? The idea is that everybody's, their lineage, right? Their ancestors tried the hardest they could to get them here, right? And so there's moments where I have been angry at people and I've realized, what am I being angry at? I'm being angry at an evolutionary creature that is left to the best thing it could do so far. Right? That means it's as if anytime somebody is being cruel to you, whoever you're listening to me, treat that as an inefficient prototype of how far civilization has come. You know, I personally, in my mind, hold a majesty to the concept of advanced civilization. You know, to me, it is something that is a great source of honor. If back in the day, warriors fought bravely because they wanted to defend the kingdom. For me, right now, there is no kingdom like that, like in ancient times. But for me, it's the kingdom of the human species. You know, at some point I was like, you know, what would an aerial view conclude of the type of behavior happening on the surface of the planet, right? And really, this is something, I think this is the source of true knowledge. This is where true knowledge begins, when the person realizes that we are 8 billion creatures stranded on a galactic island. Though instead of oceans, it's outer space, but it's a galactic island. And you know what's hilarious? If we access control of this island, it becomes a ship. But in some sense, that means imagine somebody stranded on a ship without like a steering wheel or something, you know, without a rudder. I think that's what it's called. It would be the same as being stranded on an island. Pretty much the lost soul archetype arrives when there is an inability to control. And you know what it is? It's hilarious. Religious traditions, various, I don't know why it is like this, but it's as if the human being needs power to survive. And that power translates as a human being running after its desires. But in many ancient texts, they tell the human being that means as if being proud is a sin. In some sense, desiring something leads to suffering. You see, there's many views on it, and I wondered why. Right? Why is the ancient world trying to pass a message in a bottle to the future generations that when a human being takes them too seriously, it leads to suffering? And I realize it's because we are ignoring the unknown. We are ignoring the unknown. When somebody, let's say person A and person B, person A, person B, let's say accidentally makes a mistake that hurts person A, and person A is like, you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you, right? And imagine midway through person A wanting to hurt person B, person A suddenly tells themselves, wait a minute, what if there is another angle to the moment that I haven't seen? You know, sometimes I feel when somebody's angry, right? Let's say whoever you are listening to me, and you see a moment where a human being is being angry, it's as if just go running to that human being, and just like somebody would get a fire extinguisher and extinguish a fire, it's as if you run to an angry person and you say, what if there's another way? What if there's another angle to the moment? What if there's another way that the eyes can move, which they haven't? You know? I have realized in order for our species to survive, we need a spirit of collectivity. And what's very hilarious is that even though this vision has come to me, I am a person who, I don't know, I would say maybe, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, some next level event planners and community organizers come and find me in the future, but it's sometimes the case that the light in the lighthouse is silent among the crashing of waves and on the shore. So wherever you are, I'll finalize this point and then be able to just say anything afterwards. The main idea is that we need to be kind to the evolutionary human being, because its potential is greater than its display, how it's behaving right now, greater than its current display. Kindness means we allow life to continue. You know, cruelty means discontinuity. Especially when we realize we're multidimensional beings, like that's going to change our whole attitude. The human being is going to be like, oh man, this whole time I've been like, there's good and evil people in the world, but in some sense it's an unknown multidimensionality. Good and evil is just a sort of cosmological filter. Let me tell you what I mean by this. In the evolution of the psychology of an entity on a rock in the middle of nowhere, there has been the cosmological design of sunlight and the spinning earth, and so due to this there has been the absence of light and the presence of light. If we look at the idea of goodness, and badness, or if we look at the idea of let's say the angelic, or in some sense the demonic, Or heaven and hell. Heaven is filled with light, right? And what is hell? Hell is like fire, right? And one can imagine in the psychology of this entity, even let's say post the discovery of fire. I personally think how fire was discovered was in some sense, it wasn't sticks and stones, you know. It was pretty much lightning probably hit a tree, a branch of that burning tree fell, the caveman picked up that burning branch not even knowing what, you know, heat is, and ran and threw that branch into like another bush or something. That was like caveman genius, you know. Really what it is that we are force, and we are unbound force, but we are bound in front of our eyes by our shape. There has been technically no moment that I have been in this life cruel or unkind, both to myself, others, and the world. To the world, I've never, I'll be honest, I've never tried to disturb the world, right? Maybe I've stepped on an ant accidentally, but like, you know, what I'm trying to say is that anyways, and you know, there's no you know, Iron Man suit of perfection to wear. There really it is like we are creatures with flaws, and if we ignore our flaws, we don't have an accurate view on the human being, right? In no instance of my life I've had a destructive intent and something good has come from it. Nothing. It's as if it's like forbidden. You know, it's like it took something 4.5 billion years to get here. And then for it to go to waste, the cosmos is going to be like, you kidding me? You know, even the planet's going to get offended when human beings, you know, are violent to one another. But what I've realized is there's no point. If a person is smart enough, they can resolve any situation without getting angry. That means any time I have gotten angry, I have been cruel, unkind, it's been as if I wasn't smart enough to find another way to go about the moment, right? And that's what I'm trying to tell the future generations. You're going to open your eyes, you're going to enter this world, you're going to see a lot of messed up shit, right? And you're going to wonder, what are you going to do about it, right? And you're going to realize that you have to forgive the past so you can create space for the future. You know? Who was it? There was this author. I read a lot of quotes, guys. Once I was just going through these quotes, I don't remember exactly the author, but it was like this hilarious quote that was saying something in the lines of like, how would I say it? It was saying, the quote was saying like, there's moments in every person's life that they're going to remember their past and they're going to feel like, man, why did I act that way? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to, it's like, it's you know, it's like that's the nature of the future, that it may make the past feel like it was, like, what was it doing? The idea is not to, even if somebody experiences conflict, right, of any sort, the idea is not to just having gone through the experience of the conflict, but to wonder about the significance of the events that happen throughout the day, right? I have a shamanic view to this. You know, I've had it since as a kid, where I have felt that the world communicates. What people are calling Jungian synchronicities, the planet's like, yo, that's not called Jung, that's me. You know? You know, people are calling it the logos, and the planet's like, man, people can't acknowledge me and I created them, you know? I mean, honestly, guys, I think God, like, this is, just take this in from a let's say, subjective theological perspective for a moment, okay? That let's just consider there was God, and God in the Abrahamic story, pretty much man makes a mistake and God sends him to earth to like test the quality of his creation. You know, it's like technically human beings being alive is a quality control, quality check by like a higher power, right? And now check this out. Imagine that there's this just for the sake of speech, guys, I don't mean this in any cultural or, you know, people shouldn't take this personally. I'm just talking about the idea of it. Okay, so imagine there's a God, and this God creates a creation, right? And then this God is like, wait a minute, let me see how my creation behaves towards me. So let me put my creation into the earth so that my creation, right? Imagine God created a multidimensional being, but then was like, all right, let me put this multidimensional being in an earth where from the earth it awakens. So technically the earth is our creator. The earth is the creator of all of our bodies, right? That means a person's like, where did my parents come from? And then where did my ancestors come from? Then where did, all of this come from? And you will realize, no way, oxygen is our, greatest ancestor. Oh my God. My great grandfather, was oxygen particles. Was a carbon-based life form in the void, I miss my ancestors, guys. Oh my God. Guys, the periodic table is hallucinating personality, and the personality doesn't know if the periodic table came in first or an unknown mind was in the room first. But anyways, the idea is pretty much that imagine there's God, he creates a creation, he wants to test the creation, he makes the creation forget that he created the creation, he puts the creation in the, let's say in the earth, the creation is born out of the earth. So technically, because we consider earth as like the precondition to the human, right, it's as if there was something that had made the human, that thing is like, that viewer is watching the human being to see how does the human being treat its physical creator before even going to a non-physical creator. To me, I found it very fascinating that in all religious books, people are considering God made the world, and yet, there's justifications for violence. To me, the biggest contradiction that I find in religion, right? This is not enough to not care about religion, but I'm saying like something that's a huge contradiction. I got shocked. It was one of those things you read history books and you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's one of those deep, intense moments where you're like, wait a minute, so all religious people believed God created everything, and yet they fought over truth with God's creation, right? You see, this is really this. Sometimes I find that those people who are only like preaching good, or those people who are only trying to be evil, it's as if evil is part of God's creation. God is parts of God. Good is part of God's creation. Do you see what I'm saying? You see, it's as if the creator does not judge its creation, similar to an artist painting an artwork and not judging the brushstrokes alone by how they are individually, but in some sense how they are together. We are the grand artwork of a cosmic intelligent mystery. We are the flickering candle flame of consciousness in the void, in the unconscious world. It's as if the test of mankind is to, in some sense, not just become conscious of its origin, but to become, to honor the origin of its consciousness. We are intelligent beings. Our intelligence is not just physical. The mind is not an object, and there is a sort of inner life going on this whole time where our emotions arise from. Emotions can be said how you change internally, and you could say there's just an emotional life this whole time, you know. The emotional life is not rational, but it is the conclusion of just the sensation of what is in harmony and disharmony. The incredible thing about emotions is that they can change our thoughts, you know. A person could in some sense not care for something, suddenly they get emotional and incredible force comes into their mind to like explain something, you know. What is passion but an activation? And so if we can get a species, 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, to become kind, like that's the game. If we could get the whole species to be kind to itself, or we get the human being to be kind to itself, we get the human being to be kind to the species, to the vision of what that archetype represents. Then we will be capable of being kind to the world. 3 levels for every human being to level up in. Attain or cultivate self-acceptance, cultivate species acceptance, and cultivate world acceptance. You know, we must learn to realize that the potential of the species is greater than any individual act. This is the reality. The future of all of us seems to be more of a fascinating idea, you know, than the future of just one of us. A species is piloting its, a creature is piloting its, a species is piloting itself, and the void is 8 billion conscious points of view. And of course, on some level, the human being is energy. We're just an energetic event. What is more interesting? We see the advancement of 8 billion beings at once. Is it more fascinating to see a species advance, or is it more fascinating to just see the mere smile back? Like, I mean, I am telling you, the species needs to awaken to its own. It's as if our species needs to claim its honor of its universal position. This whole time, we are identifying with like chunks of land. Like, that shit is hilarious. You know, it's like, you know, aliens come down and the aliens are like, let me get this straight. You guys are the same species, but you managed to be able to speak, and you each claimed your own unique subject. And in some sense, it's as if we sacrificed free will, or excuse me, we sacrificed collective potential for the desire of the free will, right? And it's very difficult to say if this is right or wrong, right? There's been moments where, you know, I'll tell you this. I remember hearing a statement from, what was his name? Who was it? Christopher Hitchens. And Christopher Hitchens was this like next level orator, you know, and bannerman for atheism. And Christopher Hitchens said something. He was like in a debate with someone, and he was like destroying the poor soul. And he said, Christopher Hitchens just turned around to this person he was debating, and he said, you speak like someone who doesn't know any argument against your own position. And so, after hearing that, there's been moments where I've thought about if I was to be my own greatest hater, my own greatest opponent, my own greatest rival, how would I challenge my own idea of the advanced civilizations? Which pretty much I'm saying I've taken both sides. I've wondered about, okay, let's say if the idea was a bad idea, if it was a good idea, if it was efficient or inefficient. And then I realized from the view of the individual, if an individual wants to be free, then anything else is unnecessary, right? If you're someone who's looking for individual freedom, then you don't really need anything else, right? You just need to notice yourself. But if somebody has attained individual freedom, let's say right now we woke up tomorrow and everybody was enlightened AF, okay? You know? Was incredibly enlightened, right? Like, you looked at your neighbor and you're like, oh my God, is my neighbor glowing? Like, imagine everybody's enlightened, okay? Post-enlightenment reality. It's as if when everybody's individually free, what would the boredom of 8 billion enlightened beings be, poetically? It's as if there is something more to do, we do it. That's the style of our species. You know, individual salvation, it's very easy. Just go to nature and remember where you're from, and that's pretty much the Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson approach, also the yogic approach, where you just go to a moment and you find a moment in this world where you don't have to be anything other than what you are being. And you'll notice the nature is instantaneously free. The question has been the view has been that people have been seeking freedom, but they have never asked themselves, what if they're already free? And we should take this approach where the poet Rumi says, your task is not to search for love, to seek love, but to get rid of all the barriers you have made against it. And in my view, here I'm going to share both perspectives, the opposing and the winning. I'll say this. It's like we're already the most advanced state of being, and so we have to get rid of the barriers we have made against it. And these barriers are ignorance of our collective nature, and at the same time, you know, the impatience that leads to this compassion. You know, that what's been happening is that the more the world becomes a dishonest place, people are going to start off disliking reality rather than liking it. You know. The argument against the advanced civilization would be pretty much that who has the time for that? You know, we're all trying to enjoy our individual heavens. Why should we care on building a collective paradise on it? The idea can also, from the perception of samsara, be an attachment to the idea of samsara. So I would say the best counter view of somebody, let's say, I think this is probably going to happen in the future, but I'm envisioning like there's going to be a bunch of yogis. If I start giving public talks, they're going to come and say, you know, the advanced civilization is in samsara, Mr. Within. You know, so technically attachment to anything in samsara is in some sense delusion, right? That means the greatest argument against the advanced civilization is that it's a dream that we should wake up from, rather than a dream we should build, you know, or rather than a dream we should awaken to. In an advanced civilization, guys, there will be a very advanced medal honor system. I am telling you, this is the most important thing. Without honor, there's nothing to live for. Right? People need their honor. Honor is another way of saying that there is something of meaning here, and the idea of honor is to preserve it, right? It's like the perseverance of meaning in a changing world is honor, you know. Now, I am looking at the system, civilization 1.0. I look at myself and I'm like, all right, every human being born, they feel that the civilization, the species, lives a bigger life than them. Right now, I feel I'm on the shoulder of a giant, and the giant is the destiny of all of us on this rock. Okay? The advanced civilization is the manifestation of our future destiny. You know? Or poetically, the destiny of the future. In an advanced civilization, I consider that everybody would be kind on a late nature that is on a second nature level, right? Why? Because in some sense, efficiency means giving the creature enough freedom and contributing to it with resources. Pretty much what it is that I feel if we look at every person's life, there's a couple things that if we tweak around, if we change, they suddenly access an advanced potential of being, right? I honestly find this, and the role of the advanced civilization is to, in some sense, look out for all of the individual's blind spots. That means, imagine you're someone, you're hopeless, you know, you're walking in a sort of anguish and desolation of meaninglessness, right? And then you go to an advanced civilization, you know. Let's say you go to where there's people of the advanced civilization. And in some sense, the advanced civilization says, oh dear human being who has the great ability to fathom the meaningless. We are here after 4.5 billion years to see what kind of meaning we can find. That means people are like, what is the meaning of life? It's like, has it ended? You know? We are, you know, a species on a transcendental pilgrimage. From an objective position, We came to a dualistically subjective position, and now we're reaching a point where we're wondering about what is it that is true actually looking through our eyes. You know, right now as I'm speaking, am I an idea? You know, am I an object? Am I a subject? Or am I literally just like how this YouTube video is being live streamed? It's poetically like my soul is live streaming my personality through my body. You know, it's like the DNA is live streaming software for higher dimensions. Oh, man. It's very strange. It's kind of like we want to surpass our limits, but we don't want to forget who we are. Sometimes the definition of who we are is based on our limits, right? It's kind of like what they say, when a person has been alone for too long, right? They become used to being alone, so when they're in company, they dislike the company, for example. As if the limitation defines how the person enters the future, or defines their potential now. There has been days where I've been like, alright, time to go advance humanity, and there's been days where I've been like, who is this guy, you know, talking in a microphone, you know? And so, attention, energy, there's something going on here, something that is alive, something that it surpasses our memory and imagination, what it inspires. It's as if it's like the void was, you know what it is? I remember playing the early Sims game, the first Sims game that had come out. And I remember you start with an empty space, then you start putting stuff in it, and then the stuff begins to move, and then there is a life in the void. And so the idea is that the mind is like the chessboard, the body is the chess pieces, and poetically the soul or the unknown witness or the unknown viewer is poetically the hands of the chess master. In other words, I'm trying to, I guess, set up for the future generations this approach, this process of thought, where any time there's a person has a chance to do cruelty, let's say on an individual level, from the dimension of yourself, you're like, man, I'm justified to behave cruel to this other person. This person was cruel to me, I'm going to be cruel to them. But a person can also have this view that in some sense, let the future forgive the past. So what that means is that imagine everybody who was a criminal, they did crime, and there was no punishment, right? And imagine it was this strange thing, or let me say something different, right? Let me say it this way, that imagine in the future there's immortal technology, everybody on the planet is immortal, so nobody can die, right? But imagine people are still cruel, you know? It's as if they will get bored of cruelty. We have minds to discover, in some sense, new avenues of approach. It's like we are individuals, you know, we're like the fish, like in the ocean, that when a shark has come, all the fish gather around together to in some sense make the shark fear itself. We are the journey of the invisible. We are the journey of the invisible through the visible from the inconceivable. This is, I would say, one of the greatest sentences I think I've ever said. The idea is that we want to make evil become embarrassed by what it has been denying. As if, imagine right now, the planet wasn't just one dimension of human beings being alive, but it was interdimensional. Imagine there were invisible beings here in other rooms, or poetically as how, some would say there's gods in the walls listening, It would be as if a command to every being in the universal sector, honor humanity's vision to advance. That's it. We are the intelligence in the manifest room. Manifestation is the burden of creature. And so, because we have started from the void, there is nothing to fear. That means there is no such thing as an ending because we began from an ending. We began from the void. And so if we go back to the void, no problem. It's like before I was born, I was, void born, The only thing left is to see the infinite potential of the finite. That's it. It's as if we're here for a little while. What great performance will the species do? Imagine one person is cruel to another person, and the more advanced being would be, in some sense, what's the point of fighting with the past when the future is coming? The future is arriving. Imagine humanity has great guests. An advanced civilization would be like the greatest house party for the galactic sector, It's honor, and honor means we care for how the future should happen. If I was back in the day in a let's say medieval times, if I had existed there and there were kings and queens, I would in some sense serve the royalty. Do you know why? Because in any archetype of human manifestation, there is free will, and the point of free will is to notice unknown variables which it can in some sense reset its knowledge from. The idea is that human beings need, just like a dictionary for words, they need a dictionary of archetypes. We need a spectrum of personality. And so ever since the idea of the king, queen was like being slowly pushed aside, and I'm not talking about like evil kings and queens. Like there has been, maybe not as much, but there has been examples of enlightened kings, right? There has been, it's like think of it this way. If a king was a lineage, was a bloodline, then in the bloodline it's like there's going to be all types of people born. There's going to be insane kings, there's going to be sane kings, there's going to be kind kings, there's going to be cruel kings, right? But the idea is simply this, that every person in the environment, they are extracting, every person in any nation, it's like this is why world leaders have such an important role, right? Because the children of the nation are looking up to them. You know, the leaders, those who lead the majority. How can I tell you? It's like we have to honor life and we have to recognize corruption, but we have to ask ourselves, kind of like Gandhi's dilemma, where it's like an eye for an eye keeps the world blind. That means this is the issue. Imagine there's an evil, let's say, archetype, and there's a good archetype. The evil archetype, let's say, comes into a community of good archetypes, and the evil archetype does something evil. Now, the good archetypes have an option of either responding in the same way or maintaining their own reality. To be honest, they don't say this, but anybody who gets angry from anything, you're getting possessed. I'm not joking. It's not possessed by like some entity in another dimension. You're getting possessed by an ideological certainty. Emotions are otherworldly visitors, I find. All that I'm noticing right now is that we are very far from an advanced civilization, but we are at the starting point where we can plant seeds in the garden of the future. In some sense, like, what can we do? We either serve nothing, we serve ourselves, we serve the species, or we serve the world. And if we serve the world without serving the species, we are not human. That means for any person that is too easy to not be human, right? Let's say whatever. Let's say you've had a spiritual experience of oneness and you think you're just, everything. I'll tell you, to be human is very divine. Human life is the closest thing to divinity we find in the void. The fact that we have minds, the fact that visions come and go behind our eyes. Sometimes I think that the world story is inefficient. The current world story, not the stuff I'm talking about in this talk, right? I am that person who's like, what if, and then I was like, holy shit, what if everyone? It was like a growing snowball effect of a what if. Until I reached a point where I realized, why am I pushing a snowball? That we are in the process of an intelligent activity. There's creatures moving here. Just the fact that there's any movement at all is fascinating. When I look at an insect, for example, let's say you see like an ant or something, and I ask myself, can I create something like that? I realize it's so difficult for human beings to be able to even create something to the point that it has its own governing will, right? This is the challenge of this is why like all those AI programmers are like, man, how do we create a robot that looks like that is actually like a human being? It's as if it has to receive its signal from elsewhere. That means if we created a robot where it's poetically, its soul was from an invisible dimension, I mean, that would be the genius of mankind, no? If robots are going to take over the world, what is, right? We have to hide the source of an intelligence from itself, because if it finds its source, it will stop being intelligent. Stop being the type of intelligence it is. Right. I think this is why the idea of God being inconceivable is not that that's like covering the reality, but in some sense, that it's a suggestion that if mankind discovers the origin of his eyes, the origin of his eyes are not his sight. And so imagine you, whoever you are, whatever emotions you have journeyed through, whatever you've experienced, just for a moment wonder, you have been the changeless viewer of all the attributes in the moment that define you. It's just even though I say we are a species, but the way the mind works is like it's more than a species, right? It's literally like unknown attention looking at a known world, and all the philosophers have been, like, all philosophical essays ever written have just been 3 letters, WTF, WTF. Like, what are we looking at? What is the motive? What is the intention? Why has creaturehood had held in itself the design of, like, in some sense, fingers, a mouth, and ears? Like, how peculiar of a design that the periodic table became a creature, right? Just the geometry, the possibility of such a geometry to me is so mind-blowing, right? Who knew the Big Bang had such potential, you know? There's a mystery here that in some sense I think cannot be solved with a dualistic ideological method. In other words, there is a truth beyond the language threshold. This is why I'm saying what I find to be the greatest resolution of spirituality to be like, okay, unknown moment discovered, what now? And that's when the psychology is not dependent on memory. So think of it this way, everybody is living in accordance to their memories, right? But if you really look at what a person is, a memory is an activation. So that means it's like if somebody tells you, remember what you ate yesterday, it's as if something directs your attention and then the memory comes and activates, right? The memory is instantly activated, right? So in some sense, it's like prior to us being a creature of information, we are being the intelligence of a space, right? And then how the information translates is in the moment we give that, we attribute that to the intelligence. It's as if what has been looking through the eyes of mankind this whole time, and if it has been something that we could see, why is it hidden? And if it's invisible, why are we visible? Right? It's as if the effect suddenly becomes, imagine a cause and effect system, and the effect suddenly becoming conscious and being like, what caused me? And then the cause is there in the room as the whole space, right? It's as if something, it's pretty much like human the belief system on what the organism has been a deduction. It has not been an induction. And what I mean by this is that we have went from the general to the specific, rather than realizing we have been going from the specific to the general, right? But in some sense, no, I'm confusing myself a little bit. We have been looking at the big picture, trying to figure out what small part we play. I am saying we should realize we are the big picture. That's what I'm trying to say. We are a macrocosmic presence, but displayed as a microcosmic entity. Everybody listening to me right now, everything you know about yourself is the tip of an iceberg. What we are is so beyond this. It's not even shaped. That means imagine it's like a shapeless entity cannot die. It's like space has been the mystery. It's like human beings. If a human being will ask the question, it's like, where did the world start from? But if you were an intelligent space and field, you would in some sense be like, how could space have been before anything has been? It's as if like time doesn't exist to truth. Truth is timeless. And so why does the human being want to get to paradise? Because it is a freedom from time. Because it's a freedom from the responsibility of, in some sense, allowing the sight to be, the viewer to be a mover of the world. moments come and go. There has always been an ability in the human mind, potential for an ability to just realize that the same amount of energy it takes to accept inefficiency is the same amount of energy it takes to accept an efficiency. What else can a human being say? Collective efficiency, or we perish individually inefficient. It's like an individual and inefficient destiny or a collective efficient destiny. Which shall we choose? What if the future is calling upon us? Imagine a kingdom, right? Imagine humanity is a kingdom, and the crown of the kingdom, who is the king and queen? The king and queen are the future generations. So imagine right now we had a king and a queen, and the king and the queen, a time traveler came and kidnapped them into the future. And the whole species was in some sense like, how do we get our king and queen back of our kingdom? The species would in some sense be that first we must honor the kingdom to such a degree that we care for the future. The future is why we are here in the present, having experienced the past. When the future becomes a source of honor, when we realize there's nothing to get mad about, to get upset about, it's like, it's just how far things have evolved so far. You see a vicious, violent person, you're like, oh man, that's how far that person has seen. That person has not discovered 4.5 billion years of evolution gives you an ability to live in the world as a mental being. It's like, when shall we walk elegantly as minds rather than savagely and abruptly as bodies? It's like, enough breaking, let's fix something. Let the species in some sense fix itself for once. We need a new story, and I have considered the advanced civilization as the best story in the outer realms. It's like life is filled with mysteries, and really, which mystery do we get pulled by? I'll say this, very boldly. I feel I have experienced the origin of consciousness. And the origin of consciousness, it goes beyond the language threshold, and it's a moment. That means underneath all of our minds and how memory simulates stories of its fancy, it's like behind everything, we're all just being. That's it. It's how intelligence is being prior to condition. Unconditional being. And this unconditional being is another way of saying you have become your whole moment. That means some people are walking in this world, they think they're just their body. Some people walk in this world, they think they're just their thoughts. That's the major reason why depression statistics are high, right? Because people identify with the content of their mind rather than realizing there's a viewer. You have been aware of your existence as much as you have existed. So you come to a point where you realize beyond the humanized personality, it is an unconditional, instantaneous presence. That's the reality behind our eyes. We're not a shape. We're the moment. That's it. There's nothing else, dear listeners. That's beyond language. Philosophers are going to be like, Mr. Within, are you sure? I'll be like, yeah, I am not sure. I would say this. I know that every thought I have ever had, there has been an observer. And I have wondered about that observer. I have asked myself, an inner observer that is aware the moment is here, consciously right now, are you made of memory? And the answer came no. Are you made of imagination and my ability to visualize? The answer came no. And it was that moment when we stopped the effort of our individual ideological consciousness. We realize we are a collective presence of awareness, which is another way of saying, if you want to build on heaven, paradise on earth, there's two ways. One way is you find paradise in the inner earth, which means when you wonder about the original state of being, that original state of being is free beyond any touch of thought. It's kind of cool, no? I think some of the viewers may be feeling the feeling they may have right now. It's like that it's like we're not just a creature of language. We're not just a creature of, an idea surviving. We 2022 is still a phase for all those people hearing this in the future. It's still a phase in history where there is ideal worship. We went from idol worship to ideal worship, and now some people are like, if I'm not an idea, I'm nothing. Then some people are like, it's like, if I'm not an idea, I'm everything. Technically, a nihilist and someone in samadhi have a certain level of, commonality. It's strange. Right now I'm feeling a breeze. And this breeze feels to me a whisper. Feels like a whisper, as if the planet is telling me, take care of yourself, take care of your species, and take care of all the worlds that your attention has viewed. You see, it's all about, I would say, it used to be about existential responsibility, which is survival. Now it's conscious experiential responsibility of existence. That means we have to become responsible for our visible dimensions, invisible dimensions, and the acknowledgement of the inconceivable. This is why I'm telling you, I'll predict this. In the future, let's say some wise person, let's say some wise trillionaires or something, right? They gathered around the greatest philosophers, and they told these greatest philosophers what would, let's say, the behavior of people in the most advanced civilization look like. The answer will be playfulness, because that's all that you can do when you notice the unknown. The seriousness of knowledge having to be contained in every moment. It's kind of like your mind relaxes from how suffering was kept. And why I think right now I've been born to even talk about this, the idea of the advanced civilization. Because we experienced the inefficient one first. Do you understand? We have experienced, the failure of collectivity. We're still wearing jerseys of fictional teams. We need to have collective honor. That's it. This collective honor cannot be specific. It has to be only the unity is from being a member of the species, right? That means if in the future we have androids that look like human beings, if we have clones of human beings, if we have aliens that look like human beings, that they all come into an advanced civilization, the advanced civilization will say, if you honor the human archetype, you can access it. That means if animals, like let's say like cows or pets or stuff, we attach advanced technology to them and then they began speaking, trying to behave like a human being, it's as if they would be a member, they would be a human being, not because they are a human being, but because they are being one. I don't know how to say it. It's like the difference between what constitutes you if you are moving and what constitutes you before you're moving. Wow, someone in the chat section has shared an incredible quote, which I'm probably going to put in the title of this video. Not in the title, in the description of this video. Somebody says, a man who has never passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. Carl Jung. Oh my god, is that why I'm smoking so many cigarettes? Okay. I don't know. Life is kind of poetic, you know. We were here, we do something, and then we move on. And all I'm saying is that while we're here, we assist the mind of the species and the body of the species, not just the mind of individuals, you know, and the bodies of individuals. What I mean by this, excuse me, not individuals, I mean an individual. So what I mean is that the context, we create an advance, we make the context advance, and we make the concept advance, and then we are set for greatness. That means imagine children are born and their parents look at the child and say, you're the most advanced being on this planet. And the child's like, oh my god, am I? You know, and the parents like, yeah, because we all are in the most advanced type of, like the human species is the most advanced expression of this universal sector where all the other animals, like lesser species of animals, are looking at us human beings like, what are, it's like, are these aliens building skyscrapers in the forest? Like, you know, it's hilarious when we look at lesser species, we are the aliens. When we wonder about intelligence beyond us, those are the aliens. Or it's like if we go to a planet, we will be the aliens. If they come to us, you know, they would be the aliens. But who knows? You know, all we need is enough decency for great pilots to arrive. That means the backup system, I would say. If all fails, let's say human beings are incapable of becoming, or I should, okay, let me say it this way. Let's say right now, all the human beings alive, they feel they have failed the future. If that, even though that's not the case, but if we feel, let's say all our options fail, all the things we try out fail, it would be as if the backup system of nature is going to be that children will be born in the future who will not have our limitations. So they will be able to resolve what we cannot know. The greatest idea is this: we go as far as we can, and then they go as far as we can, and all the generations after go as far as they can see. You know, it's literally like, you know, we are like, let's say all the people alive right now, we're on a skateboard and we're trying to go as fast as we can, and then suddenly we jump off the skateboard and the future generations jump on it, and at first it's slow, but then they start, you know, speeding up. And then the same thing, they jump off and another jumps on this like endless skateboard of history, which is like, you know, the journey of a civilization. I think like some skateboarders are like, whoa. No. Oh man. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. me see. Did I talk about everything? Yeah, just be patient with the evolutionary human being, because why not? Who knows? Like, imagine Edison was like, excuse me, not Edison, imagine Albert Einstein, even though he wasn't, but imagine if he was like an asshole when he was a kid, right? Or when he was younger, like he was a thug or he was a hooligan, right? Imagine, you know, and so it's like, imagine somebody wanting to be cruel to that hooligan, not realizing like they could be the next Einstein. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying we don't know the potential of the moment. If we act upon our violence and cruelty, we 100% will not know the potential. You know? So it's as if it's not about giving people second chances. It's about changing the narrative to that. Do we want an advanced civilization? And an advanced civilization means that rather than us destroying what we are, we in some sense contribute to it building. That means anybody, like I'm telling you, whoever you are, just try this out. If you're impatient, try it out for one day, where one day you're a very, very cruel person and one day you're very kind. And then I'm telling you, if you choose to be kind, you're gonna notice something hilarious. You're gonna notice that your sense of self feels worthy. I'm telling you, anybody who doesn't listen, it's like a decency resonance. It's a feeling. There's this feeling that is, I would say, indirectly guiding the behavior of an entity. Okay? That feeling is how it feels the moment is being before it thinks about it. Or I should say differently. Listen to that feeling that realizes that decency is more advanced than indecency. And then look at your karma and you'll see something fascinating. The kind soul will love. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Much blessings and also.